Hello, this is News Pulse at UATV. Today in the episode, drones attacked the Wildberries logistics complex in Yekaterinburg, a city located more than 1,700 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. The first integration track of the Freya missile defense project has been completed. Zelensky says first results will be this year. The intelligence-sharing relationship between the US and Ukraine has bounced back to previous highs. What has changed? Drones attacked the Wildberries logistics complex in Yekaterinburg, a city located more than 1,700 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. Eyewitnesses say fire trucks and police units are converging on the site of the strike. A fire has been reported in the first warehouse block. The consequences of the strikes on Wildberries are already being felt at various levels of the Russian economy. According to estimates, the cost of repairing the company could amount to a quarter of Russia's annual budget deficit. Due to the exodus of sellers, the marketplace's turnover has already fallen by a quarter. In the temporarily occupied Crimea, the Gvardeyskoy military airfield is burning. Powerful fires engulfed the facility after a series of loud explosions, monitoring public right. According to the latest data, a warehouse of fuels and lubricants is burning on the territory of the facility. Also, the detonation of ammunition can still be heard there. The Gvardeyskoy airfield is used by the occupiers to launch Shahed missiles across the territory of Ukraine. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed attacks on the storage, preparation, and launch sites of attack drones in the Gvardeyskoy area. A Russian early warning radar station was also hit on the peninsula. The Security Service of Ukraine, together with other units from Ukraine's defense forces, has struck Coast Guard vessels operated by the Russian Federal Security Service in temporarily occupied Crimea. As a result of drone strikes on the port in Kerch, two Svitliot-class patrol vessels of the Russian FSB Coast Guard, Balaklava and Kerch, sustained damage. The Freya program, a common European anti-ballistic missile system, is already underway. 10 countries have joined, as announced by President Volodymyr Zelensky. He emphasized that Ukraine is capable of producing its own missile and launcher, and that its partners will provide the necessary components.
Others spent decades developing their systems. Ukraine must do this as quickly as possible, with concrete results already in place by the turn of 2026 to 2027. Ukraine is also working to develop ballistic missiles of its own. The tests have shown strong potential. We need to turn this into a real weapon. The National Security and Defense Council, our intelligence agencies, the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, the Air Force, and the Brave One Defense Cluster, all institutions of our state are involved.
The first integration track of the Freya missile defense project has been completed, according to Dennis Stillerman, chief designer and co-founder of defense company Firepoint. Firepoint has begun integrating European components into the Freya project. The Ukrainian FP-7 ballistic missile has already completed approximately 15 test launches and is undergoing certification by the Ministry of Defense. This process is expected to be completed within the next 2 to 4 weeks. Firepoint expects to first use this version of the missile in combat conditions as early as autumn 2026. The intelligence-sharing relationship between the US and Ukraine has bounced back to previous highs, according to longtime Ukraine watchers, a welcome boost during a critical window of opportunity for the Ukrainian war effort. Cooperation from the US has been key to Ukraine's positive turn in fortune. Trump reportedly approved intelligence sharing for Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure last year, which have been essential to creating a proper incentive structure to push Moscow to the negotiating table.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appears to have risen in President Donald Trump's estimation as Kyiv has made gains against Russia. In early July, a barrage of Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure forced Moscow, one of the world's top fuel exporters, to halt its exports of diesel. The increased frequency of those kinds of targeted attacks has put the Kremlin in a tighter spot, creating what Kyiv has argued is a window of opportunity for Ukraine to leverage its current advantage to end the war. From Politico.
The Saratov oil refinery in Russia has completely shut down due to critical damage to its only primary oil distillation unit. Following an attack by the Ukrainian Defense Forces, the Volvybrad oil refinery, one of the 10 largest in Russia, also shut down. Long-range Ukrainian sanctions have already reduced oil refining in the Russian Federation to record lows.
Ukraine's defense forces have struck the Russian Bashneft Novoil oil refinery in Ufa. Ukraine's general staff has confirmed. The facility is located more than 1,400 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. A fire broke out at the plant following the strike, and the full extent of the damage is still being assessed. President Volodymyr Zelensky stressed that Ukraine's systematic long-range strikes are increasing the chances of a diplomatic resolution.
We have also carried out successful responses to Russian aggression in the Black Sea. In particular, 2 military patrol boats and vessels belonging to the so-called Shadow Fleet were hit. Our long-range sanctions are once again working to reduce Russia's oil revenues, which it uses to finance the war and the killing of Ukrainians. I thank all the soldiers of the defense forces who are systematically expanding our long-range capabilities and, by doing so, increasing the chances for diplomacy. Russia must choose peace. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The Slavneft Yanos refinery in Yaroslavl was also targeted. The facility produces gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel, all critical to the logistics of the Russian military. Its capacity is roughly twice that of the Bashneft Novoil refinery, at around 15 million tons of crude oil per year. This was already the 7th attack on the Yaroslavl refinery.
According to preliminary information, 4 RVS 2,000 crude oil storage tanks were damaged, causing an oil spill. 2 of the tanks caught fire. Key processing units, including ELOU-1 and AVT-3, were also damaged, and fires broke out there as well, from a publication on the website of the Security Service of Ukraine.
Over the course of 40 days of operations, Ukraine's defense forces struck more than 100 strategic targets, both inside Russia and in Ukrainian territories temporarily occupied by Russian forces, according to the Security Service of Ukraine. The targets included 14 oil refineries, as well as dozens of oil depots, storage facilities, pumping stations, terminals, and an offshore oil production platform.
There is a classic saying that a party agrees to a deal when it feels a real threat to its very existence. So far, dictator Putin does not see it that way. Yes, he is afraid and hides in bunkers, but he still considers Russia a strong state. Therefore, we need to continue what we are doing. We need to move the war onto the enemy's territory as much as possible.
Experts say the purpose of these systematic strikes on Russia's strategic infrastructure is to undermine its military, economic, and logistical capabilities. The goal is to make continuing the war simply impossible for the Kremlin.
40 days of operations is not the limit. We can go further. The key is to make it systematic. We are now seeing strikes on oil refineries, and more vulnerable targets will be identified. Data centers, for example, are another potential target. So we need to continue along this path and encourage our partners to strengthen our capabilities.
The results of Ukraine's long-range sanctions are becoming increasingly evident. Russia's oil refining volumes have fallen to their lowest level in 24 years, according to Bloomberg. The agency reports that in July alone, Ukraine's defense forces attacked Russian oil refineries, tankers, maritime infrastructure, and major oil pipelines at least 30 times. As a result, Russian refining output fell by at least 1/3 below the seasonal norm, forcing the aggressor state to increase its exports of crude oil. But transporting that oil has also become increasingly risky. Over the past several months, vessels belonging to Russia's so-called Shadow Fleet have faced growing pressure, with more and more of them being detained by Ukraine's partners. And just recently, Sweden's Supreme Court issued a final ruling to hand over the confiscated cargo vessel Kafa to Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign ministry confirmed the bulk carrier was part of Russia's Shadow Fleet and had been sanctioned over the illegal export of grain from Ukrainian territories occupied by Russia. The Swedish Coast Guard detained the Kafa in early March 2026, reported by Victoria Chistiukina, UATV News.
That's all for today's News Pulse. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.